Jephthah the Gileadite was a tough warrior. He was the son of a prostitute, but Gilead was his father. Meanwhile, Gilead's legal wife had given him the other sons, and when they grew up, his wife's sons threw Jephthah out. They told him, "You're not getting any of our family inheritance. You're the son of another woman." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and went to live in the land of Tob. Some riffraff joined him and went around with him. Some time passed, and then the Ammonites started fighting Israel. With the Ammonites at war with them, the elders of Gilead went to Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to Jephthah, "Come, be our general, and we'll fight the Ammonites." Jephthah then has this conversation and says, "Well, why should I? You hate me. But I'll do it if you make me your chief." So they agree. And then Jephthah goes to the Ammonites and tries to negotiate with them, but they don't want to know. And they end up going to war. The king of the Ammonites refused to listen to a word that Jephthah had sent him. God's spirit came upon Jephthah. He went across Gilead and Manasseh, went through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he approached the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow before God. "If you give me a clear victory over the Ammonites, then I'll give God whatever comes out the door of my house to meet me when I return in one piece from the Ammonites. I'll offer it up as a sacrificial burnt offering." Then Jephthah was off to fight the Ammonites, and God gave them to him. He beat them soundly. 20 cities, a massacre, Ammonites brought to their knees by the people of Israel. Jephthah came home to Mizpah. His daughter ran from the house to welcome him home, dancing to tambourines. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he realized who it was, he ripped his clothes, saying, "Ah, dearest daughter, I'm dirt. I'm despicable. My heart is torn to shreds. I made a vow to God, and I can't take it back." She said, "Dear father, if you made a vow to God, do to me what you vowed." God did his part and saved you from the Ammonite enemies. And then she said to her father, "But let this one thing be done for me. Give me 2 months to wander through the hills and lament my virginity, since I will never marry, I and my dear friends." "Oh yes, go," he said. He sent her off for 2 months. She and her dear friends went among the hills, lamenting that she would never marry. At the end of the 2 months, she came back to her father. He fulfilled the vow with her that he'd made. She had never slept with a man. It became a custom in Israel that for 4 days every year the young women of Israel went out to mourn for the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. So welcome to the book of Judges. Well, into this context, we get the story of Jephthah, strong, brave, feisty, virile, confident, powerful, a warrior, a leader, a man, self-made and servant to no one. Well, you remember the woman who dropped the millstone on the head of Abimelech, the evil leader. She breaks the mold of the pure, ornamental woman. She glides into the story just a chapter or so before this, and she crushes the skull of the evil warrior chief. It's not pretty. That story ends in blood, hair and bone. Jephthah's daughter is often, literally, painted as this obedient, meek, compliant figure. Noble and pious, pure, virginal, and ready to die, perhaps looking to the sky with her breasts exposed and a distant look of noble sacrifice in her eye. She's the perfect counter to the wild, bloody, violent machinations of powerful men who used her as an excuse for their dark behaviour, for control. They used her to pay for their success. Well, that's how it's painted. But what if she wasn't some meek and mild, pale-skinned, pre-Raphaelite beauty with a distant look and a perfect virginal body and a willingness to submit to the foolish and proud and arrogant stupidity of her father? If you think I'm focusing too much on her virginal purity, it's not me, it's the Bible. Whilst the men were rutting with prostitutes and foreign women, their wives and daughters remain at home, paragons of virtue, sacred and patient. Except if you really read the Bible, they're not. So Jephthah's daughter has no choice. She is to die because of this stupid and proud boast of her father, who's too proud and too stupid to say that's ridiculous. I didn't mean it. Who was too cowardly when it came to it, and ironically, considering what a macho warrior he was, it was too much for him to say yes, but not that. You couldn't lose face. Much like Abimelech, who couldn't bear the thought of being defeated by a woman. What if Jephthah's daughter knew that that was her unavoidable fate, though? A terminal prognosis, a death sentence. But she isn't going to go quietly, not without living the life that is about to be stolen from her. Do you really think? She said, yes, and alas, dearest father, I will die willingly, give up my life to retain your honour. Because in the story, she's the one that says, wait a minute, I'm not even married. She brings out what she's missed out on here, on the wild side, the human side, on love and lust and partying and all the good things that life can bring you. Do you really think she went off sedately with her well-behaved, compliant friends and an afternoon tea and manicures all those weeks in the hills? Remember, if you will, that it was wild times, and why would that wildness only apply to the men? Isn't the feminine spirit also wild and dark and powerful? And remember, if you will, that these were human beings, and humans haven't changed that much. The animal within us remains the same as it was with those. You've only got to switch on the news to see that. What would you have done if you were 16 or 18, whatever, and you were told that you were going to die, young and unmarried, with no ties at that point? If you knew that, and you and your friends knew that, wouldn't you go for one final blast to Ibiza, or max out your credit card, or hire a sports car and drive wildly around the desert? What would you do? What would any gang of women or men do? And remember, these were wild, untamed times. There was no king in Israel, no laws, no centralised police force, just wild, untamed deserts, settlements with no one for miles, and demons in the desert spaces. And this band of marauding women. Read this story for real, not some saintly, pious legend, with people emotionally like you and me. What's happening between the lines? In the shadows cast by these big, heroic men, what were we, the ordinary people, doing? How do they respond to the tragedies that they face? What are you doing? How do you respond to the tragedies you face? It's powerful people who make big decisions, who grab the limelight and the money and the contracts from Saudi princes. And we worry if perhaps we got enough money to top up the gas meter. They don't care in the Ritz, in their suites, in their private jets, in the back of the limousine. They're too powerful and important to actually care what the person on the other side of the wall is doing or having to live with. And Jephthah didn't care. If someone died to protect him or his reputation or his honour, he didn't really care. So she responded, his daughter, and the writer doesn't know or doesn't care what they did in those hills. So what are we to do? How can we understand these texts of terror? Can't we just have the parable of the sower again? Can we just have some teaching about hats or something like that? Well, you can. And many do, and are quite happy to do so, to stay in the shallows where it's clear and also obvious. But that doesn't really sustain us when we're faced with reality, illness, betrayal, fear, death. Because that neat, squeaky clean stuff doesn't quite cut it when we're faced with those times. And you know it, because you see it in the brittle grins, the forced smiles, the denials and the exclusion of those who don't fit in because their lives don't look pure or compliant or virginal. But this story, these stories, are the meat of our Holy Scriptures, just as they also tell the reality of our lives, of our world, perhaps of your experience. It's your story, woven in to the story of God's salvation. There's no neat resolution here when you read this. It doesn't specifically tell us so, but the silence says far more, I think. As if the soundtrack suddenly drops. As if the picture in the film suddenly goes dark. She dies. Or more accurately, she is murdered by her father, as he said he would. Big man. So what are we to do with this? Leave the church? How could God approve of this? Ignore it? It's so long ago. It's so obscure. It doesn't matter. Pretend that it's not there. Perhaps just do a nice series on the first book of Thessalonians or something. We don't have to do anything. When we hear these stories, just absorb it into your skin. Let it soak into your bones. Let the story colour your soul. So you can taste the story, feel the heat, melt the heart at the tragedies that we face, the tragedies that we inflict. Let the mystery sit. And the response to all this, Gaza, Ukraine, India, the hospital ward, you. What's the response of God standing with his arms folded while men decide who lives and who dies? What is the response of God? It's bread and wine. It's the cross. The wild darkness of that time, of our times, of your own life and your own soul, your story. The darkness finds its resting place in the cross, where God draws to himself those things we did and those things that were done to others and to us. The darkness of those times, of those acts, of all times, falls onto the cross and onto Jesus and is buried and finished. And Jesus takes it and restores it, restores us to a new life, a new narrative, a new story. We join those nameless and named people around the cross, Peter and Mary, the other women and men gathered there, absorbing what is happening. And in Jesus we find, as they found, life healed and restored, life returned. God unfolds his arms in response to all this darkness and reveals his heart, and light shines out. So know it, be it, be wild, live it, a life of freedom and joy, and taste it now, a glimpse now, a hint now of the final restoration. Take and eat the body and blood of Christ in all of its wildness, its extravagant, risk-taking love and joy that death cannot defeat. For this is his body, given for you and for the life of the world. Amen.